The following is a summary of the Sicha of Shabbos Parshas Voeschanan, Shabbos Nachamu, Tovshin Nun Aleph. On Shabbos Nachamu, we start the Shiva Dinechemta, the 7 Haftarahs of consolation. And we start the Haftarah with the words, Nachamu, Nachamu Ami, comfort, comfort my people. And the reason, of course, we repeat it is because this is a Nechama Bekiflaim, a double comfort. A comfort of the first temple that's been destroyed and a comfort for the second temple that was destroyed. The question here is, how does this fit in with the content of the Sedra that we also read this week, the Parsha Voeschanan? Because in the Sedra it tells us of the Tefillah, the 515 prayers of Moshe Rabbeinu, of Moses, that he should be let into the land, and God's refusal. It also talks about him staying with his people and Joshua, Yehoshua, leading the people into the land, which of course thereafter, as predicted in the Sedra, led to Churban, destruction, Golus, exile, and further. So seemingly the comfort of the Haftarah doesn't match the descent of the Sedra. Now you may say that that's the reason why we need a double comfort in the Haftarah. But in fact, in content, there is in fact a great similarity between the two, as we shall now explain. First of all, let's talk about the idea of kefel, doubling, the double consolation. Whenever we talk about the concept of kefel, doubling, it's not just double, but it's more. It's the idea of addition, adding on, ultimately, infinitely. Let's quote a Midrash, a Yalkut Shimoni in Parshas Lech Lecha. There the Midrash says that there are 5 letters in the Hebrew Aleph base that were doubled. And whenever they were doubled, it's a reference to Geula, to redemption. So the first was the Chaf of Lech Lecha. Hashem says to Avram, Lech Lecha me'artzecha, go out of your land. There's another letter Mem, another letter Nun, and the letter Pei was also doubled. Pokoid Pokadati, that was the password, if you want, to the Jewish people when they were in Egypt, that they were going to be redeemed. The letter Tzadik is doubled, as it says, Ish Samach Shemoi Umitachtov Yitzmach. Says the Medrash, whenever we find the doubling of these letters, it leads and refers to redemption. And in fact, that's the meaning of the verse in Zechariah, which says, Kiflayim l'tushia. The word tushia can also come from the word Yeshua, which means salvation. So Kiflayim, whenever we have this doubling of the letters, it's the idea of redemption. And the reason is because this doubling, or the idea of multiplying ad infinitum, is connected to Geula, to redemption, because then in redemption we'll have the full achievement of going ad infinitum, in the sense that the third temple will be an everlasting redemption, after which there will be no more Golus and no more exile, and an everlasting building which will never be again destroyed. And in fact, the doubling of the words Nachamu, Nachamu has an edge even on the other letters, because in the other letters, when they were doubled, there's some change in either the way the words are written or vocalized. So for example, Lech Lecha, they both have the same letters, but they're vocalized differently and have different meanings. Lech means go out, Lecha means for your benefit, for your good. Pokoid Pokadati, Pokoid is the idea of visitation, Pokadati means is in the past tense, so the tense is different. Tzamach Yitzmach, again, different tenses, different meanings. However, when you say Nachamu, Nachamu, it's exactly the same. What is the difference between them? The difference is because when letters are doubled but there's a change in them, it can mean that there's a change in the way that there's the redemption. So, yes, there was the destruction of the first temple, rebuilding of the second temple, but the second temple was different than the first. When you say Nachamu, Nachamu, it's the idea of having double, but exactly the same. It's a complete continuum, and it goes ad infinitum. How does that, and how is that achieved? So there's another medrash, Yalkut Shimoni in Yeshaya, which tells us how it's achieved. There the medrash says, the Avos, the patriarchs, and the Nevi'im, the prophets, came to God, and they said, Ribono shel olam, this people is not receiving consolation. In other words, whatever we've said to them, they don't accept it. So Hashem said to them, you know what? If that's the case, ani v'atem, let's go together and comfort them. And hence you have the double phrase, Nachamu, Nachamu, in the words of the Medrash, Nachamuha, Nachamuha, imi. In other words, instead of saying the word ami, Nachamu, Nachamu, ami, we revocalize, according to the Medrash, to say imi. Imi means with me. Come with me, Hashem says, and I will go and comfort them. And of course, when God himself comforts, then you have comforting ad infinitum, in the sense that you have an everlasting redemption and an everlasting third building of the temple. And we can actually see that in more detail by having a look at the specific Nechama, the consolation for the first and second temples. As we said beforehand, Nachamu, Nachamu, one is a Nechama consolation for the first temple, and one is a consolation for the second temple. So, since we got two consolations, they must be different consolations because of the different advantages which are in each one of the temples. Yesh bazeh masha'im bazeh. There is in one what there isn't in the other. What was the advantage in the first temple? The advantage is his galus elokus, revelation of godliness. You had the ark there, the Shekhinah was clearly manifest in the first temple. However, upon destruction, of course, the ark was entombed, the Shekhinah departed. There were 5 things that were missing in the second temple that there weren't in the first temple. Yet the second temple did have some advantage over the first temple. As the Talmud says, it was godel ba'zman uba mokim. It was greater in the sense of it lasted longer. The first temple only lasted 410 years. This lasted 420 years. And it was greater in terms of its building. So in terms of kvius ba'olam, of being fixated in the world, as far as worldly parameters are concerned, the second temple was greater. So in summary, the first temple was great in terms of revelation of godliness, which is, if you want, from above. The second temple was greater in terms of worldly parameters, being a stunningly beautiful building which Hurdas refurbished, etc. If you want, from below, the Nechama, the true consolation, will be when we'll have both those advantages fused together in the rebuilding of the third temple, which will fuse those two advantages and hence be true and everlasting. And that is paralleled in the Sedra of Voeschanan. Because in the Sedra, we have the doubling of the 10 Commandments. The first set of Aseres Hadibros, the 10 Commandments, is in the Parsha of Yisro. The second set is in this week's Parsha of Voeschanan. What is the difference between the two sets? Apart from the various nuances and difference in expression, why was it repeated? So, simply, the first set was the account, if you want, from above. Whereas this set is Moshe Rabbeinu's account from below. In other words, the first set was, if you want, a godly revelation. This second set is Moshe fixing from below, if you want, the 10 Commandments in the hearts and souls of the Jewish people. You have that idea also expressed in the language of the 10 Commandments. It says that the language used in the first set of 10 Commandments was written on the first set of tablets, which was smashed by Moshe. The language used in the second set of tablets, a second set of commandments, was written on the second set of tablets. on the second luchos, the luchos hashnias. And there was also a difference in the status of the Jewish people at that time. The first set were given when the people were tzaddikim, righteous. It was before the sin of the golden calf. The second set were given when the people were ba'alei teshuvah, they were returnees. So that's the difference, if you want, again, as a revelation from above or a return from below. The ultimate fusion of the two and the true Nachamu will be when Mashiach comes. As it says, the Mashiach comes in order that tzaddikim will do tshuva. In other words, we'll have the advantage of both, and we will have Torah chadasha mi'iti teitzei, the Torah as it's going forth, if you want, the Torah of Mashiach, which is a fusion and a perfect fusion of both of them together. And now we have the answer also to the beginning of the Sedra as to why Moshe's prayer wasn't answered. Moshe prayed 515 times, and the answer was no. What was the reason? The reason was because in order, Moshe, if you want, was something from above. However, there needed to be the conquering of the land from below. Yehoshua needed to conquer the land in order that the conquering and the division of the land should happen from below. But since there is something lacking in that dynamic, thereafter there was destruction and dispersion and a long exile. And the Talmud tells us, why were the Jews exiled amongst the nations? Simply the reason is because of their sins. But the Talmud tells us, Kadei sheyitoisvu gerim b'Yisrael, in order that converts should be added to the Jewish people. Chassidus explains, what are these converts? These are the nitzutzi kedusha. These are the sparks of holiness scattered in the diaspora, which the Jewish people gathered throughout their long sojourn in the diaspora, in all four corners of the world, gathering these holy sparks and bringing them from below back to become fused again. And of course, that fusion will happen by the Geula, by the coming redemption, when you will have the perfect fusion from above and below, when the entry into the land will be with perfection. Moshe Rabbeinu and his generation will come in, and together it will be with the lands of Keni, Knizi, Kadmoni, a complete Eretz Yisrael from below. This all happens on Shabbos Nachamu, which is the Shabbos after the 15th of Av. In that year, in the year Tafshin Nun Aleph, Shabbos Nachamu came after the 15th of Av, which was on the Erev Shabbos, which was on Friday in that year. Now, the 15th of the month is the full moon. The idea of a full moon is Shleimus HaAvodah, completion in one's service. And it says that the Jewish people are compared to the moon. They will be renewed like the moon. The moon waxed and it wanes. And similarly, the Jewish people, they had their down periods, but they will have their full moon. And the ultimate full moon will come when Mashiach comes, especially in the month of Av, which is called Menachem Av. And Menachem is one of the names of Mashiach. And especially when the 15th of Av falls on a Friday. And the idea of Friday is the 6th millennium, because each day of the week corresponds to each one of the millennia. And Friday corresponding to the 6th millennia, which on Friday, everything is prepared already for the beautiful meal of the Shabbos of the coming of Mashiach. And the whole purpose of this long exile is in order that from below we should have the complete elevation, so that when we have the fusion of above and below, that will be the complete full moon. And then, of course, we will have the true consolation. And that's why the 15th of Av is a great Yom Tov, which falls immediately after the 9th of Av. On the 15th of Av, the Gemara tells us that the nights get longer and the days get shorter. And consequently, kol hamoisif meisifin loy, the more we add on in Torah learning at night time, because night was created for Torah learning is added on to our lives. And that, of course, that hoisafa, that addition, goes ad infinitum. And especially this year, the Rebbe said that was in Tafshin Nun Aleph, in 5751, where we're seeing amazing wonders. And the Rebbe specifically referred to the kinus hashluchim, to the gathering of the shluchim that took place in Russia, in that very land which fought against the Frierdiker Rebbe with such great force. That very land is hosting and honoring a large gathering of shluchim from Russia and from outside all over the world, and especially in the Ir Habira, in the capital city in Moscow. There's actually a connection over here because one of the famous Ma'amorim, which the Rebbe Rashab would say frequently, was the Maimah V'Yodaita, which is actually based on the Likutei Torah in the Parsha of Voeschanan, and the Maimah got the name V'Yodaita Moskova. So therefore, practically speaking, we need now, because it's Friday, and on Friday we taste all the foods of Shabbos, we need to start tasting already of the era of the future redemption, and that comes through adding on in Torah learning, especially in the Sefer Ein Yaakov, which, as the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, Roiv Soidas HaTorah Gnuzim Ba, the majority of the secrets of the Torah are hidden inside it, and especially after we're coming from the 5th of Av, the Yortzeit of the Rav Rizal, who said that mitzvah legalos chochmah, that in these generations it's a mitzvah to reveal the esoteric wisdom. And certainly we should also learn those matters connected with Geula, such as the Rambam, the laws of Mashiach. And if possible, it should be by 10 people gathering and learning together. This Shabbos we also learn Pirkei Avos, Perek Gimel, and the Perek starts off with the words, Histakel b'shloisha devarim. Look at 3 things. And the idea here is that we should look at the 3rd Geula. We should look at the 3rd Beis HaMikdash. We should see how that's going to be culminated by our true avodah in the 3 kavim, in the 3 lines and pillars of Torah, avodah, and Gemilas Chasadim. And through looking at this, we will be able to merit to see also the Beis HaMikdash, B'Karev. And that's connected also with the Sedra that we read at Mincha time, which is the Sedra of Ekev, because the word Ekev is connected to Ikvasa de Mashiach, the heels of Mashiach. And then the prayer of Moshe will be fulfilled, that his generation and all the generations of tzaddikim will go with all the Rabbeim and our Rebbe Berosham at their head to enjoy the simcha of the Geula. And as it says in Masechta Tainis, that Osir HaKadosh Baruch Hu lases mochel tzaddikim, that Hashem will make a dance for the tzaddikim, and each one will point with his finger and say, V'amar b'yomahu hinei Elokeinu zeh kivinu lo. We'll be able to point to the revealed state of godliness, Nagila v'nismecha b'Yeshuasei, and we will rejoice in that beautiful salvation.